Exiles in the Southeast, the fusion of becoming American. Core identity system in pre-1700s Southeast. Belonging came from clan, matrilineal in many societies like Muskogee Creek, Cherokee. Town, your village. Confederacy or nation, kinship adoption networks. You were a person of the land only if you were born into its clans or formally adopted into them. Land wasn't owned individually. It was held by the nation/towns collectively. Terms/conditions for displaced peoples. While exact English labels come from later historians, these are the functional categories that existed. Refugee towns or satellite towns, common throughout the Southeast, displaced groups formed new settlements under protection of a larger nation. Examples: breakaway or refugee bands joining the Creek Confederacy, remnants of Mississippian chiefdoms relocating after collapse, groups fleeing slave raids or war. They retained partial identity but lived politically under host protection. Confederacy Incorporation. Large southeastern polities were confederacies, not single tribes. The Muskogee Creek Confederacy is the best example. It absorbed war refugees, captives, migrant bands, remnants of older chiefdoms. These groups could become Creek over time. This is ethnogenesis in action. Intermarried frontier figures. Common in Spanish Florida. Soldiers or settlers marrying native women, forming mixed households. Children usually followed the mother's clan, matrilineal societies, so the children became a part of the native nation. Adoption, individual or group. A major pathway. War captives or displaced individuals could be adopted into clans, given kinship roles, and be fully naturalized. Once adopted, they were socially of the people. Regardless of Iberian origin, their descendants would be indigenous to that nation politically and culturally. This was common among the Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Creek, Catawba, Natchez before dispersal. Client peoples/dependents. Some displaced groups lived under protection but without full incorporation. They might pay tribute, provide military alliance, remain culturally distinct. Some remained traders, interpreters, artisans, military allies. They lived in towns but without clan incorporation. They were attached but not fully native. Causes of displacement pre-1700s. Before large English settlement, major drivers included Mississippian collapse 1300s to 1500s, urban chiefdoms declined and populations dispersed, disease waves. Spanish intrada expeditions introduced epidemics. Whole towns relocated or merged. Slave trading networks. By the 1600s, Westo, Savannah, and English allied tribes conducted large-scale slave raids, displacing many groups inland and southward. Intertribal warfare. Competition over trade routes, hunting grounds, and European alliances. Did they become people of the land? Yes, but only through indigenous political processes. Clan adoptions equal full belonging. If adopted, you are kin. Kinship equals land rights. Your descendants were native to that nation's land. Identity followed the clan, not biological origin alone. Confederacy absorption is a new nationhood. Example: the Creek Confederacy formed from Muskogee core groups, Hittichi speakers, Alabama Coatsy, Yuchi, Shawnee refugees, others displaced by war/slavery. Over time, they became collectively Creek, so displaced peoples became a part of a new people of that land. Town relocation without identity loss. Some groups relocated but stayed distinct. Natchez survivors dispersed among Creek and Cherokee but retained Natchez identity for generations. So they lived on the land but weren't seen as its original people. Indigenous versus incorporated distinction. Pre-1700s Southeastern societies did distinguish between original town/clan people versus adopted/attached people. But over generations, this line blurred, especially with intermarriage and shared warfare. Belonging was relational, not racial. Unlike African diasporas or tribal refugee nations, Iberians in the southeast were few in number, male-skewed soldiers/sailors, and absorbed individually. So they did not form stand-alone Iberian diaspora nations there pre-1700s. Instead, they disappeared into Spanish colonial society, mission populations, and native kinship systems. Religious identity after incorporation. Among native nations, Christianity, Judaism, Islam were not primary identity markers. Kinship plus town mattered more. So a Sephardic or Morisco background would often dissolve socially within 1 to 2 generations if fully incorporated. Secret practices could persist privately, but politically they were part of the host nation. Land belonging concept. Important difference between European thought. You didn't become of the land just by living there. You became of the land by clan ties, sacred geography, ancestral burial grounds, and ritual responsibilities. Adoption transferred these relationships. Ethnogenesis in the Southeast. The Southeast is one of the clearest cases globally of new peoples forming from displacement. Examples: Creek Confederacy, multi-ethnic refugee formation. The Seminoles, late 1600s to 1700s Florida, formed from Creek migrants, runaway enslaved Iberians, mission Indians, and refugee bands. A new people formed in a new land. European misinterpretation. Colonial records often flatten this complexity. They labeled groups as Creek, Cherokee, Yamasee, but many were confederated refugee composites. So modern tribal names sometimes reflect political unions and not single ancient tribes. What happens to a stateless/ exiled people in the pre-1700s Southeast? They could become refugee towns, attached bands, Confederacy members, adopted kin, or client peoples. Do they become the people of the land? Only if adopted into clans, or absorbed into a confederacy, or formed a new ethnogenesis identity there. Otherwise, they remain distinct refugee peoples living on another nation's land. Heritage accepted, history honored, every lineage, one legacy.